Hey there, and welcome to the Reclamation Room. I'm Ashana, and I'm so glad you're here. This is a space for women reclaiming themselves after narcissistic abuse. If you've ever felt like you were too much, not enough, or both at the same time, you're in the right place. I created this podcast because I know what it's like to lose yourself in overgiving, overperforming, and still wondering why it never felt like love. I've walked through trauma, toxic relationships, and the long road of self-reclamation, and I'm here to walk with you. In this podcast, we'll explore what it means to come home to yourself after the confusion and chaos of narcissistic abuse. Some episodes will be solo, others will include guest interviews. All of them will be honest, grounded, and deeply compassionate. So, whether you're just realizing what you've lived through, or you've been on this path and you're ready for the next layer of your healing, you are welcome here. This is not about perfection. This is about reclamation. Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Reclamation Room, the podcast for women healing from betrayal trauma and narcissistic abuse. So, this episode is kind of a surprise. I don't have a script. I don't have any kind of talking points here. I'm bringing a topic that has come up 3 or 4 times today in chatting with clients and going over some notes post-meeting. And this is the topic of hating ourselves and shaming ourselves after we've been in relationships that caused pain, harm, a lack of trust, betrayal. It can be really easy to come to this place of saying, why did I allow myself to get in this situation in the first place? I should have known better. I should have seen the red flags in this person. Why did I believe the illusion, right? Like, I'm really smart. How did I fall for what this person was feeding me? Or when the going got tough, why did I not leave, right? And we hear this all the time. Why didn't she just leave? But we do this to ourselves too. Why did I waste so many years of my life? Or, why did I accept that kind of treatment? I thought I had more respect for myself. These are very common things that we say to ourselves. And so in this episode, I want to kind of debunk those and reframe a little bit and just bring us back to a place of clarity, back to a place of giving ourselves grace, kind of understanding why, the how and the why and the where and how we got where we are, and then giving us a little bit more even footing to move forward into the future. Because the last thing we want to do is to take this sense of self-shame, self-blame, self-doubt into future relationships and think, I have no connection to my intuition. How am I going to know not to do this again? If I didn't catch the red flags before, how do I know I'm not going to do the same thing again in the future? So kind of a redirect here, like slow down, take a deep breath. Let's kind of dig into why these patterns took hold in the first place. So just thinking back to when you were a child and you were here in all of your glory, in your personality traits, your quirks, your living completely in the moment. So emotion-based. Like, there's not a sense of logic there. There's not always a sense of, how is this going to affect the other person? How is this going to affect the family's routine, the schedule, like the things that my mom or my dad wants to get done, my siblings' needs, things like that. We're not always aware of those things in the moment, right? As children, we're very much feeling our body. We're moving around. We're squirming. I remember flipping over the A-frame of the swing set, right? I would grab the bar and I would just like swing over it repeatedly, and I would hang off the top and pretend to be a gymnast. Just being very present and in your body and being yourself, and that's who you are. And the shame game doesn't come until later, like the learning to check ourselves in public or act differently around people or speak differently to fit in. That doesn't come until later. But I want to dig into that place now in this conversation and think back to when we were being our full, complete, unadulterated self. What kind of feedback did we receive about that? And what kind of treatment were we getting that led us to believe, okay, yes, this is love. This is connection. This is how I get attention. This is how the dynamic of connecting to another human being is going to work for me. And this could fall kind of on a continuum. I mean, we could have on one end of the spectrum, we could have an extreme situation where a child is completely neglected or ignored or put down or criticized all of the time, and they learn that the only time they're going to get that connection is when it's negative attention. On the opposite end of the spectrum, We could have a child who pretty much gets their needs met. I mean, they could say, like, I had a decent childhood. I had good parents. Like, I had what I needed. But then the question becomes, let's dig into the deeper needs that you had as an individual and as a person, right? Like, did you have someone who was listening to your opinions and validating them and helping you see why that might have been true for you? Did you have someone who was meeting you where you were at? And like, let's say you needed extra time to process something, or your tender heart favored one stuffed animal over another, but you needed extra time to tell them all good night the same amount so that one of the stuffed animals didn't get their feelings hurt. Small things like that. If those things are invalidated, or if we even pick up on body language that leads us to believe that this was a nuisance to someone or annoying or nobody had time for that, we can kind of start to internalize these beliefs that maybe this isn't the right way to be. Maybe this is bothersome to people when I have needs that manifest in this way. And so the purpose of this episode is not to say that, like, no matter what, you have trauma, the end, like everything that happened to you caused you to be this way. It's hopeless. Rather, what I'm saying here is, regardless of which end of the spectrum you fell on, or anywhere in between, or outside of the spectrum, and your experience was completely different to what I'm saying here, if you experienced something that led you to believe that you needed to change something about yourself in order to get a connection with another person, that is a belief that you carried with you. And if it repeated enough over time, even in differing contexts or in relation to another belief that was repeated, these start to form the building blocks of our personality and the foundation of how we have relationships with people moving forward. So I just really want to make it clear that it's not that you were stupid when you got into a relationship like this. You've got to look back at what was your foundation, right? Like, what was your blueprint for human connection? What did love look like to you? What did giving love mean? What did receiving love mean? What kind of communication styles were present? What did your family teach you about valuing another human and hearing other opinions? There's so many things that go into play here. But the bottom line is that regardless of what your past experience was, the last thing that we need to be doing is shaming ourselves for what we've been through. So number one, it makes sense. And even if our brains cannot logically process that, just understand that it made sense at some point to some version of you, or else it wouldn't have happened. So giving yourself grace for that, and then moving forward into understanding that the tragedy in shaming ourselves for this is that this vulnerable self, this loving self, this open self, this person who trusted a partner or an individual, and we trusted them with an open heart, like, hey, I believe in you. I see the best in you. I think you're not going to hurt me. I think this could be something really special here, enough for me to take that leap and move forward into a relationship with you. You know, maybe our expectations were different than their expectations. Maybe our idea of a relationship was different than their idea of a relationship. It doesn't matter. What matters is that that part of you who is open-hearted and caring and kind and compassionate, and even that part of you that like kept seeing these situations over and over and choosing to see the best in that person, is that something that we want to change moving forward? Probably. But it doesn't change the fact that those parts of you were formed as the sweetest, most kind and loving and open-hearted version of you who literally just wanted connection with another human being. And that's never a reason to shame yourself or to think that you're weak or to think that you're stupid. The desire for human connection does not make you weak in any way. It actually makes you healthy and alive, because as humans, what we need more than almost anything else is connection. There have actually been studies that showed that babies who didn't receive physical connection and that kind of attachment from a caregiver, if left long enough, they actually died. Heartbreaking to even consider, but what it means for us is that as humans, we are not meant to do this alone. We're meant to have connections with others, and a big part of doing that in a healthy way is understanding where our patterns come from and understanding, like, these parts of us make sense and they're innocent parts of us, right? They're parts that are seeking this connection. What kind of example did we have to go by? Shaming ourselves is not going to be the answer here. So I don't want this to turn into this spiral of like, well, great, now I'm shaming myself for shaming myself. I even did that part wrong. No, that's not what I'm saying here. The next step of this process is realizing, okay, that was the open hearted version of myself. That was the kind and compassionate version of myself. They were so sweet. They were so trusting. I say to myself, like, she was such a baby. She didn't know. And she loved this person so much. And so allow yourself to sit with that version of you and sit with that feeling of loved this person so much and talk to her, talk to that version of you. You know, what was it that was love for you? What was it that you wanted to give them so badly? And what was it that you wanted to receive from them so badly? And really like leaning into those emotions, leaning into the pain instead of away from it, instead of shaming ourselves for it, instead of, I just want to get out of this feeling and get back to normal again. Like, God, I don't want to feel this anymore. Leaning into that aspect of it and saying, what is it here that was so heartbreaking to me? What did I not get that I needed? Or what did I get that was really hurtful and it confirmed things about me that I was already afraid were true? What is the theme here that is causing me such a sense of pain, but I still want it so badly that I was willing to keep going back and trying to get it or to give it? What is that thing? And I think digging into that is where we can really start to tap into our needs as a human, because needs are so important. They're human, number one. We have them, they're a thing. But they also show us like the limitations that we're willing to go to. They show us what boundaries need to be put in place, what parts of us need to be cherished and protected and strengthened and nurtured. And so I think when we are looking at the future in terms of being in relationship with others again, we need to first come into a deeper relationship with ourselves. And that's not going to happen if our relationship with ourselves is one that is painful or scary or shameful or not safe. So I really want this space to become a place that is also encouraging people, like, get to know yourself, from a different viewpoint. You know, get to know the younger version of you that went through what she went through, and now get to know the older version of you that's being there and protecting that younger version of you, because that next step of protection is actually really important, because moving forward into relationship with yourself but also with other people, that kind-hearted and compassionate side of you, if you truly want to be in a relationship with another person, that part of you still needs to be there. We don't need to shame that part away. And so the way that we can do that safely is by obviously creating boundaries. And I know this is a really difficult concept. And for those of us who have been giving and giving and giving our whole lives, it can feel awkward to have boundaries. It can feel like we're being mean or like we're asking too much of other people. Boundaries are really a way of trusting yourself to show up and protect that compassionate and vulnerable part of you who needs to be there. You need to have those parts of you, because if you think about it, the people that you were in relationship with that hurt you, and I don't want this to become like, oh, those people. That's not what I'm saying at all. But just think about relationships that did hurt you and did cause harm, whether or not you played a part in that, whether or not you did things that you were proud of or you weren't proud of. Okay. If we're here, if you're listening to this, you're probably showing up and doing some kind of work to do better next time. So thinking about what the other person did that caused you harm or hurt you in some way, the parts of you that were compassionate and open-hearted and so giving and so willing to be in pain in order to meet that person and have that connection with that person, if they were to tap into that a little bit more, how could the relationship have changed? Okay. And if you had let go of that a little bit and had stronger boundaries or been more in touch with your needs, how could the relationship have changed? We have to have a healthy balance of understanding the compassion, the desire for connection with others, wanting to love someone in that way that you're willing to say, hey, let's compromise here. Let's work together. We have that compassion. We have that empathy. We have that selfless form of love that says, yes, I'm willing to give up something in order for you to be happy. Don't give up that part of you completely, because then we wouldn't have a world of people who are able to show up and give compassionately. That's why I say it's necessary. We don't want to shame it away, but we do want to show up with that balance of having boundaries, having that self-protection, having that sense of, okay, but this is what my needs are, and I'm not willing to go beyond this point. if both of you are able to show up in that way, hopefully, in theory, that's a healthier conflict that can actually get somewhere and it can help the relationship grow. So really reframing that compassionate side of yourself that was so duped and was so like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I fell for it. Recognizing that those are traits that you still want to have. You still want to be open-hearted. You still want to be trusting. Don't get rid of them completely. Don't think that you were so stupid for having them. Bring in some balance by bringing in healthy boundaries. And like I said in our last solo episode here on the show, if you haven't listened to that one, go check it out, because these kind of build on one another. Boundaries really can't happen effectively until the self-awareness is there. And so in order to set the boundaries, we have to understand our needs. And in order to understand our needs, we have to become more self-aware with where we're at and how that feels for us and what we will and will not tolerate moving forward. So we're really digging into aspects of the self-awareness here in this show. And this is really part one of the work that I do with women in my 12-week program. So I call what we do within that program the peaceful accountability method. So we have part one, which is unfuck your mind. And this is the self-awareness. So we're really like digging into the conditioning that we've been living with, the inner critic that we've been imposing upon ourselves. Where did that come from? Why is it there? Why can it still take hold? Why are we still able to validate this and believe that this is how we want to be? And then part two is trust your gut. And this is where the self-compassion comes in. And I try to weave this in to everything that I put out in the world, because this is my philosophy that we can't really get anywhere without self-compassion. You know, we can be hard on ourselves and we can give ourselves tough love all day long, but until we're able to really meet those vulnerable parts of ourselves with compassion, we're just going to keep having the same issues pop up down the road, just in different contexts. And then part three is follow your heart, which is the self-validation. So this is when all of these practices come into action. We're out in the world. We are relationally learning amidst other people, right? Like we're having things mirrored back to us. Sometimes we have triggers. We need to learn how to validate ourselves instead of constantly seeking other people's approval. And so really and truly, like everything that I do, I try to weave all three in, but I focus heavily on the self-awareness because it can be easy to check out. It can be easy to numb out. It can be easy to distract ourselves. And so one method that I employ to help my clients achieve this self-awareness is to zoom out and then zoom back in. So even in this situation, in this conversation, zooming out to see the overall picture here. Like, yes, it sucks that you went through that, and it sucks that you allowed that to happen to you, right? Like we can take accountability for our portion of certain relationships. Now, when we're truly in the position of being a victim, that's not the moment where I want you taking accountability. Like you were a victim to that situation, absolutely. But we don't want to stay a victim in our mindset. We want at some point to say, okay, I may not be able to change what happened there, and I may not have been able to change it in the moment. What can I do moving forward? How do I have power moving forward? I am not completely powerless in this situation. Even if all I can change is my mindset, that's more than enough for right now. So zooming out to see the overall picture. Yes, these things have been harmful. Yes, this relationship tore you apart, ripped you open. It was awful. How could you have done this, right? Like, how could I have believed these things? How could I have fallen for the illusion? Zoom out and get the bigger picture. Okay, there's more to your life than just this one relationship. What themes are replaying? What patterns are repeating? What is the message that is here for you to say, okay, there's a need here that's not getting met. And I love that vulnerable part of myself. I love that part of myself that is so open-hearted and willing to keep giving, but it's time for me to step in and protect that part of myself. And I can do that by saying, okay, I notice this need and a boundary needs to be put in place here. So really and truly, like stopping that shame in action before it spirals. Don't even worry about the next steps that come after in that hard moment when we're learning how to do this. We're learning how to have self-compassion and really meet ourselves where we're at. I'm not saying coddle yourself and stay in this moment forever and like, yes, oh my gosh, like you're so valid, you're so valid, you're so valid. But we can't skim over that part either. Okay. Again, balance, right? So zooming out to see the whole picture and then zooming back in to meet that compassionate part of yourself and saying, I love this part of you. You are all the best parts of me. Thank you. Because without you, I wouldn't be a compassionate human. Okay. And I can protect myself now. And I trust myself to do that. And that's when the magic really happens. So I just wanted to share this episode today because I feel like this first portion of it, this self-awareness and self-compassion, are very, very important, especially moving forward. So surprise episode today. I'm going to release this one, and then we're also going to have another episode released this week. So it's a conversation I'm super stoked for you guys to hear. I sat down with Wendy Alexander, who has an incredible, phenomenal story. She's an author. She's the founder of her own business called Happy Career Hub. She moved from Africa to Australia. She now helps women who have been through trauma learn how to reclaim their narrative and rewrite their story and have a life that feels happier for them moving forward. So I cannot wait for you guys to hear and watch this next upcoming episode. But if this one resonated with you, I would love if you could give it a rate, give it a follow, give it a share. That helps us get the show out to more women who might need it. And you can find me at any time. I know I mentioned my 12-week program. You can go to wayhomewellness.com and learn more about that. But I also have a weekly women's circle. We meet every Tuesday evening, and it's just a place for women who have like-minded interests of growth and connection to come together and process and share and talk about what we're learning in life these days. So we would love to have you there. Thanks for listening. I can't wait for you to catch the next episode, and I will see you next time. Thanks for spending time in the Reclamation Room. Be sure to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if this supported you, consider sharing it or leaving a review. You're not alone, and your reclamation is sacred.